Good evening, councillors. I will do the emergency evacuation. Should we be required to evacuate the building, would you please leave the building via the nearest emergency available exit to the chamber? Our assembly point will be the public car park at the side of the Civic Suite. Please do not delay your evacuation to collect any belongings. Please do not return to the building until given permission to do so by council staff. Please note that this meeting will be audio recorded. Please put your phones on silent. Thank you. Can you now please be upstanding to receive the chairman, the chairman's chaplain and the managing director.
Good evening, members. Please remain standing for prayers, but before I ask Reverend David Oxtoby to give prayers, I'd like to welcome him very much to this meeting and to thank him for agreeing to be my chaplain for the current year.
Thank you. Let us pray. Gracious and merciful God, you have blessed each one of us with particular distinct responsibilities, unique roles and gifts. And we, as those gathered members with those particular responsibilities in our communities, we come before you. We pray and ask that you would lead us in all wisdom. You would guide us by your Holy Spirit. That, gracious Lord, we would have a common mind to the good of our communities with which we serve. We pray, O Lord, that your presence would be with us. So, Lord, we offer ourselves, we offer this time, and we offer all of our gifts unto you and to our communities. Bless us this evening in our deliberations, we pray. Amen.
Please be seated. Thank you. I'll start with the first item on the agenda, apologies for absence, and I have apologies from Councillor Dray, Councillor Mrs Lumley, Councillor Mountain, Councillor Oldham, Councillor Diano and Councillor Cannell. Are there any other apologies? Now, in the absence of Councillor Dray as Vice Chairman, the immediate past Chairman has agreed to sit here, keep an eye on me and generally assist me during the meeting. Item 2 on the agenda is the minutes of the annual meeting held on the 15th of May 2018. Are those agreed, members? Thank you. Item 3, to receive declarations of interest. Councillor Burton.
Thank you. I need to declare a pecuniary interest in item number 13. At that point, I will leave the meeting this evening.
There we go. Yes, it is.
Members, it seems a bit of an odd microphone tonight. It's on, but the red light's not showing.
All right. Bit like me. I'd like to announce that my chosen charity for this year is the stroke unit at Southend Hospital, which I hope will meet with the approval of members generally. I think it's a fantastic unit. I paid a visit to them on Monday, and had a tour around there, and I was very impressed by what they're doing, and indeed what they're hoping to do in the future with charity donations such as the amount I'm hoping to raise this year. Okay, item 5.
I believe the council would like to say something, Chairman.
I beg your pardon, Councillor Cutmore.
If we can get this one working, yes.
So I thought we were going to get you later, but
My light works on this one, so I'm not too bad. Chairman, I'd just like to say something, if I may, about the flags that have been put up in our district, all the St George's flags and the support for our England team, which I thought was fantastic. And I think it deserves acknowledgement in the minutes for this council to see all those flags going up. Yes, our boys didn't win, our young Lions, but they certainly did us proud. And I'd like that acknowledged in the minutes, and to thank the members of the public that actually did that, because I think it was a great sight to look at, all the flags that were around the district, and I really appreciate it, and I'm sure many members do.
yeah, I think it's a good idea. Good idea, and well deserved. Okay, item 5. Public questions and member questions on notice. There are none. Item 6, business from the last council meeting. There's none. 7, to note the minutes of executive and committee meetings held between the period 16th April to 6th July 2018 as listed. Is that noted, members? Thank you. Item 8. Now, I wonder whether I might take 8.1 and 8.3 together, as they both relate to reviews of the Constitution. Does any member have any objection to that? No? All right. So if we take both of those together, Councillor Burton, would you like to present those?
Thank you, Chairman. Members will have seen that the attached reports with the recommendations put forward by the review committee. Although at first glance it may appear that the reports are extensive, the proposed changes are fairly self-explanatory and were initially agreed by the working party overseeing this task, with significant input and assistance from the Assistant Director Angela Law and Paul Gowers. Their proposals were then considered by the review committee, who agreed these and put forward the recommendation before members this evening. If any members have got any questions or queries, Angela Law, myself or the chairman of the working party would be happy to try and answer or address those.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Councillor Cutmore.
Thank you, Chairman. I have a few queries, actually, Chairman, if I may. May I first go to page, page 10, 8.1.10, top of the page there, towards the top, 10.3, where it says notice of questions. A question may only be asked if notice has been given by delivering it in writing or by electronic mail to the Managing Director no later than midday on the day of the meeting. Chairman, I think that's far too short a notice for us to actually respond properly, particularly if we have a question that's of a technical nature. I acknowledge the fact that we need to give time for people to put their questions in once the agenda has been issued, or the particular question may be asked on that particular agenda. So I propose, if I may, to make that 3 days.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Steptoe.
Yeah. I'm happy to second that, Chair, but I'll reserve the right to speak at the end of the debate.
Right.
Thank you.
Chairman, I've got a number of others, if I may continue,
Yeah.
and then perhaps members might want to debate all the others as well. On page, page 8, 4.5.
They are amendments that can reasonably be taken together.
I think so, yes.
Very well.
I think that's up to members, really. Page 8, 4.5, where it says, after the ordinary member of the committee or subcommittee has notified member services in writing by email, confirming who will be their nominated substitute and specifying the committee or subcommittee 24 hours before the date of the meeting at the latest. Chairman, I'd like that whole paragraph 3, there is no paragraph 2 on here, to be deleted.
Sorry, which one are you on, Councillor?
I'm on 4.5, Chairman, which is page 818.
818. Okay, thank you.
Chairman, the circumstances of somebody who's attending a meeting might well be at the last minute, and of course there wouldn't be time to be able to do that. I accept that we have elsewhere that they should know what's actually in the agenda for that meeting, but I think it's wrong not to give the appropriate to give that amount of notice when certainly personal emergencies, illnesses may happen. So I'd like that 3 deleted, Chairman. Another seconder?
Again, Chair, I'll second that.
Thank you.
Thank you. On page, again, 4.551, where are we? 5.1. See if we can find it. Oh, that's what I'm looking for. So it's very difficult to work from 2 things at the same time. It's basically, it's a very minor one. It was changing a who to whom on a particular thing.
That was in 4.5, but I think you've just proposed that be deleted.
Oh, right, okay, fair enough. And then page 6, page 14.03, point 14.03, if we can find that, where it says the first sentence is contradicted by the second sentence. And I'll read it to you, Chairman. It says approval. Changes to the Constitution will only be approved by the full Council after consideration of the proposal by the monitoring officer. And then it says such other changes of a factual nature as may seem appropriate to make the Constitution internally consistent and up to date may be made by the monitoring officer in consultation with the Standards Committee. I can't see the link there.
I'm sorry, but unless the councillor refers to a page, I can't follow what he's saying.
It's
It's on
page
page
816.
Thank you. Going back. Thank you.
Sorry, could I read that paragraph?
It's
Yes, of course.
14.03,
14.03, item A.
paragraph
So I just wanted comment on that, Chairman, if I may.
Thank you.
Thank you. Personally, I think the second alteration I would have no issue with personally, but I would have to obviously seek clarification from other members. I personally don't see any reason why the last proposed change should be made at all. This was actually debated quite a lot within the Working Party and with Angela Law with regards to changes or minor changes, and it was felt that it would be too laboursome for minor changes to have to go through the whole entire process of coming to council, which was why it was decided that the monitoring officer really should be given the authority to make those changes, and they are very, very minor changes, not constitutional changes as such.
I think, correct me if I'm wrong, that Councillor Cutmore isn't objecting to the principle here, but merely saying that the second sentence is inconsistent with the first sentence. Because you can't have an unqualified instruction in the first sentence and then qualify it in the second sentence.
I would have to refer that to the monitoring officer because I think that was something you yourself were happy with. So.
Okay. Councillor Burton's right in that any substantial changes are to be referred to full council, and the idea behind this amendment is to allow for factual nature. So, for example, if there's been any legislative changes to, I don't know, say, for example, there is now a designated data protection officer. That's a legislative change. That's a factual nature. We have to add that to the Constitution. I mean, perhaps rather than instead of saying such other changes, what could we put? I'm up to suggestions, members. However, other changes of a factual and minor nature.
Or if you just preface the first sentence by inserting the word subject as hereinafter mentioned.
Sorry, Chairman, I couldn't.
Sorry.
Subject to.
If you merely insert immediately before changes in the first line, subject as hereinafter mentioned,
Okay.
and then you've got the qualification coming in.
Happy with what members put forward, but it's just the explanation as to why that's there.
Yeah, Councillor Cutmore. Sorry, I rather took over. I do apologise.
It's all right, don't worry, Chairman. I think you've got the drift of what I'm on about, so that's fine.
Yep.
I'm happy with that because it qualifies it. Next one I want to look at, if I may, Chairman, is page, let's see, 4A, which is 818. Sorry, it's not page 4A, it's point 4A.
Page 814A.
814A, sorry.
It's the one with sideways on it.
Oh yes, it's that one. That's why I had trouble with it. Where it says, overview and scrutiny procedure rules, changes as per appended. Working group recommends that the chairman of review should be drawn from either the main opposition group, or nominated by the opposition groups. It should be noted the council decision minute 1490/07 is that the chairman of review should be a member from the opposition. Chairman, that's not the case at the moment, certainly, and I'd like that deleted. But I understand from colleagues that at the review committee that was actually deleted anyway. I don't know if anybody can confirm that for me.
So I'm having difficulty finding that. Could you just confirm which page you're on?
That's in the appendix, Chairman.
8148, thank you.
On the second page of the appendix. Bless you.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
And do I have a seconder for that, please?
To second it.
There's two seconders.
Thank you.
Right, and I think that's it as far as that's concerned, I think, as far as that particular paper is concerned.
Okay.
I'm happy for members to ask questions or debate what I've suggested there. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor
May
Eaves.
I just raise a point of correction? Can I refer members back to page 818, item 4.5. Councillor Cutmore requested that the item marked as 3 is deleted, but the item with changing who to whom is in the first line, item 1, to take place of the ordinary member for whom there are designated substitute.
Yes.
Okay, so just as a point of correction before I speak to seconders.
Yeah, thank you very much. Councillor Mrs Mason.
Thank you, Chair. I think we've all been slightly confused by the lack of sequencing on the questions. Would it be possible for someone to summarise those in some sort of order so that we can see exactly?
I will do so before we
because
go
at
to
the
vote.
moment I'm totally confused as to what has been suggested and not been suggested.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Do you think you can have the air conditioning? It's very hot.
Councillor Eaves.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a point of clarity, if I may. The 3 days notice suggested by Councillor Cutmore, can that be clarified as 3 working days or 3 actual calendar days?
I think that was right, 3 working days. Okay. Councillor Burke.
Thank you. Yeah, in my position as chair of the review committee and in consultation with the chairman of the working party, we don't have any issues with the proposed changes made by Terry Cutmore, Councillor Cutmore. Sorry.
Thank you. Councillor Cutmore, would you like to just summarise those for the benefit of...
I'll try to do them in order, Chairman. I'll have a go, but I might miss one. Right, so let's see. Start with... because they're not always numbered correctly on here. It was the way that they were looked at. So, page 8, page 4.5, point 4.5.3 is to delete. Again, page 8, just above that is to whom, to be whom.
Yep.
On page 816, 1403, first thing is contradicted by the second sentence, so we have to change it, and I think that monitoring officer has confirmed a change to that.
Yeah.
Sideways page, Chairman, which is the second part of the appendix, which is to delete the appointment by another group other than the opposition. I understand, as I say, the committee actually didn't approve that in the first place. I'm not quite sure why it's there. Page 10.3, is it? Page 18. 3 days notice for the
3 working days.
3 working days notice. I think that's all of it, Chair.
Are members clear with that? Councillor Mrs Mason.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that it's warm in here, but unfortunately I can't hear with that on. So perhaps we could open the windows instead. I can't, hear the...
We've had this a long,
Thank you.
We've had this a long time. It's been cost us a lot of money, and it's going to be on almost every meeting in the past. I appreciate there may be a bit of a problem, but it's not something about doing. It doesn't mean we all will be uncomfortable.
Sorry, it's a lack of clarity. Perhaps the gentlemen could be allowed to remove their jackets.
Councillor Mr Hoy.
I'm sorry, could I just have some clarity over 10.3, please? Again, I don't think I've got any objections to anything said. I just want some clarity about... can we just be told what 10.3 will now read, please, in relation to 3 days? Because is it 3 days, is it midday 3 days before, or things like that? I don't know what day.
Through you, Chairman, all I'm changing is 3 working days' notice from the same day. Thank you.
Well, instead of 7 days, it's going to be 3 working days. That is correct, isn't it? Yeah.
Could I, as a clarity, could I just say it's going to read no later than midday 3 working days before the day of the meeting?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
Right, members, are we... Can we all agree on that, or do you want to vote? Is that agreed, members? You have a vote. Very well. All those in favour of those amendments, please show. Thank you. And those against? Any abstentions? That's carried. Thank you. I don't think that would work. worked out. I don't think that will work, so I think that was taken. We'll go to item 8.2, the report of the... No, we've done 8.3. We took those two together, didn't we? Okay. All right. We'll move now to item 8.3.
We've done 8.3. 8.2. We've done 8.3.
We took those two together. I do apologise. 8.2. We've taken 8.1 and 8.3 together. Item 8.2. Would you like to
Thank you, Chairman.
use that one?
Yep. As members will see, the review committee considered a suggestion to look at the recent consultation that was carried out in respect of the hospital mergers. After considering several different options, the committee felt that it was the recommendation contained within this report would be the most appropriate, with the invite to join full council. It's fairly self-explanatory. Any questions? We'll take them.
Thank you, Councillor Burke. Is that agreed, members? Agreed. Thank you. Item 8.4, the report of the Review Committee Treasury Management Annual Review 2017-18. Councillor Burton.
Thank you again, Chairman. This is one of 3 reports on Treasury management that the Review Committee reviews on an annual basis. As members will see, this report provides a review of the 2017-2018 period, and therefore the information contained within the report is mostly historic. Again, any questions, please ask Naomi Naomi's not here. Oh, yes, you are, sorry. Or Councillor Smith, portfolio holder for finance.
Okay. Are there any questions, members, or if not, is that noted? Is that noted? Thank you. Item 8.6. Have I missed one? Sorry. Item 8.5. Report of the Planning Policy Subcommittee in respect of the Local Development Scheme 2018 to 21. Councillor Sperring, would you like to introduce that?
Thank you, Chairman. I think the reports that have been submitted for this meeting are pretty comprehensive but quite lengthy, which is not a patch on what we were subjected to and having to read. The paperwork that we were submitted approached 1,000 pages. Now, while we fully appreciated that this wasn't within, at times, officers' control, it was supplementary information from other councils, it did concern us greatly, the whole issue that this generated. As a result of this, we have recommended, and it's already been starting to be actioned, that we have a meeting of the subcommittee on a monthly basis, even if it's only for a 30-minute catch-up as to where we're going. This is no criticism of officers or their abilities, but it is the sheer volume of work that they are being subjected to. There's a very strong and solid timetable that they are required to work to. We are fully aware that central government is already watching this area very closely with regard particularly to Basildon, Castle Point and Brentwood, and we don't want to come under any scrutiny from central government. We want to make sure that we've got our house in order. And again, we have expressed in these reports our concern about resources levels for officers purely in light of the amount of work they're going to be subjected to over the next years. I think that pretty much sums up our view, Chairman, unless anybody's got any questions they want to raise. But I think the volume of work that will need to be done over the next few years needs to be monitored closely. We are quite prepared as a subcommittee to do that, but we do want to highlight the concerns that we have that officers will be able to manage some of this. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Mr Hoy.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a couple of points. First one is I do have concerns about the ability to keep to the timetable as it is. I can see we're not just what we can do, it's also by national government and also our local councils from other areas, which will bring me on to the next point. I did raise this very briefly with Councillor Spelling, but also with the Managing Director, because I do have some concerns about how the seller or Association of South Essex Local Authorities and the Statement of Common Ground and what would appear to be an overarching local plan were fitting with our local plan. Now I'm aware that we as a council are ahead of other authorities within that organisation, but I am concerned that it would have, when we read the seller documents, it definitely gives the impression that there will be an overarching plan for the South Essex area eventually, and I'm wondering, and I'm looking at certainly by 2050, so some time between now and 2050 there will be a plan in place which would be an overarching one for the whole area. Now I've got concerns whether that is top down or bottom up. Is it going to come from us as a local council feeding into that, or is it going to come from the combined local authorities feeding down into what we should be doing? So I hope that's an understandable question. If Councillor Sprague could answer, I'm not sure he can clearly, but I'd be grateful. Thank you.
Well, I haven't got a crystal ball, Councillor Hoy. So on that basis, whatever I say, I think he's going to be a bit of a wing and a prayer answer. However, I understand from Mr. Cutmore, Councillor Cutmore, he will be elaborating on this when he speaks later. Yeah, as you have raised. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? In that event, the recommendation is that the Council resolves that the draft Local Development Scheme 2018 to 2021 as attached as at Appendix 1 be adopted. Is that agreed, members? Thank you. Now pass to item 8.6, report of the Investment Board. Councillor Steptoe.
Thank you, Chairman. As discussed at the Investment Board, this report sets out an opportunity to invest in the upkeep of Hockley public toilets and to hand them over to Hockley Parish Council to look after. There are three options outlined in the report to the Investment Board. Each option would allow the Council to save on the annual cleaning and maintenance costs and provide the public with a better facility. At this stage, Hockley Parish Council have not finalised their preference, but to ensure flexibility and maintain the momentum and negotiations, it is requested that the authority be delegated to the officers to finalise the lease arrangements. And I'd like to propose the recommendation that is on 861, paragraph 2.
Are there any questions, members? Councillor Cutmore.
Chairman, as members will know and members of the public will know, that we've invested heavily in toilets in our local areas. This has been a long negotiation which is still going on with Hockley. We've certainly settled it with several of the other councils, as members are aware. So this is really just about putting the budget in place so that we can get that done. There are other factors that do come into it, but at least we know that we've got the budget and we're waiting for reports from other development that may happen nearby, but certainly not within quite a long time frame as we understand it. But I certainly happily support the recommendation coming forward, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. There are no more questions. The recommendation is that it is proposed that Council resolves that on completion of the lease negotiations with Hockley Parish Council, authority be delegated to the Assistant Director, Environmental Services, in consultation with the portfolio holder for environment, to undertake installation or the refurbishment, replacement of public conveniences with an allocated capital budget of up to £88,000 as set out in the officer report. Is that agreed, members? Cool. Item 8.7. Councillor Webb, would you like to present this one?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Firstly, I would like to recognise the work that Sue Murray and the COB team have carried out in delivering a valuable and important service in our district, which provides support not only for our residents, but also helps to support our own council services to manage demands in housing and our revenue and benefits services. The service needs to go out to the market now, as the current contract expires next year, and I'm pleased that we're proposing to do so, and that we are looking to continue to maintain the current level of service provision that our residents enjoy. I would just like to draw members' attention to some of the following highlights in the appendix, if I can. Firstly, in 3.5, the current advice service contract has demonstrated social value and value for money. In 16-17, we see that for every pound invested by the council, £51 was returned into the local economy, saving the council £2 for every pound. And also in 17-18, local incomes have been increased by an estimated £486,000. I'd also like to draw members' attention to section 3.6, where analysis has been undertaken of the impact of the reduction of the value of the contract, which highlighted that even a 10% reduction in the price paid for the contract would have a significant impact on the number of clients that could be seen per week by the service. So in order to provide sustainability for the service, it is suggested that the contract will be 2 years with the option of a further year. Simply put, a 12-month contract is of little value because of the lack of security that it offers. In addition, I would draw members' attention to 8.2 in the appendix, where it is stated that within the contract, it is anticipated that the council-owned accommodation used by the current service provider at the Civic Suite, Rayleigh and Back Lane, Rochford, will continue to be made available at a peppercorn rent. That said, council-owned assets are under constant review, with one of its priorities in the current business plan being maximising assets. Therefore, the provider will be expected to discuss and consider future accommodation options throughout the period of the contract. Finally, on the first page, section 1.3, I would just like one amendment to be made to the report, please, and that is the removal of the phrase "to note," as the report should read that the council resolves that the advice service contract be retendered, rather than resolves to note that the advice service contract be retendered. Therefore, I would like to propose that the council resolves that the advice service contract be retendered for a further 2-year period, with the option for the council to extend the contract to a further 1 year, and that the value of the contract continue to be £70,000. Thank you.
Happy to second that, Chairman.
Thank you. Any questions? Councillor Hoy. Mr. Hoy.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a couple of one question, a couple of observations. One is perhaps it is normal, but I don't often come across tenders where we actually name the price before we actually do the tender. I've asked questions around this with officers, but unfortunately one officer I think must have been off and hasn't been able to reply. Could we, in future, because there are some people who have been rather confused, because the £70,000 is often referred to within the grants as well, and I think that should now be totally divorced from any mention of grants. And would that be possible in the future? Because I think to some people it looks like they're getting a grant for 70,000 and also they're tendering for 70,000 because of the way it's written. I understand that, we understand, but it looks that way, and I've had questions on that before tonight. The second point is paragraph 8.2, which Councillor Webb has mentioned. In relation to paragraph 9.2, I think they can be read as contradictory to some extent. 9.2 says the successful bidder will be granted the use of council premises on a licence, I assume on a licence, for the initial 2 years. To be granted, I'm getting the impression it's free by the terminology of that. However, obviously in paragraph 8.2, as been pointed out, the provider might be expected to discuss this. Previously, we have had values put on that. Is that value available? And that's the question I asked, and unfortunately the officer wasn't around. I'm not sure if the Councillor Webb is aware of the value of that or not, or if any success or any bidders for it, the contract would be indicated to them what the cost is. Thank you.
Councillor Webb.
Thank you, Councillor Hoy. I'll certainly take your first point back to Matt Petley and to advise that is taken forward. In terms of the value, the estimated value would be about £6,000, as that's comparable with other contracts. It was discussed whether that should be included in the value of the contract. It was felt to do so would actually to reduce the value of the contract, and that would have an impact on our residents, which is why I felt it would be better to keep it as it is. But I'll take your point in terms of 9.2 and 8.2, and I'll ask that to be clarified with officers.
You happy with that, Councillor Hoy? Councillor Mrs Mason.
I'm sorry to go back on the same point, Mr Chairman, but I've had extreme difficulty in hearing Councillor Webb, and I'm sure he's been clear, but I haven't been able to hear because of the overhead noise, and I'm having difficulty participating because of that. If Councillor Cutmore is now comfortable enough, could we again ask for the air conditioning to be turned off so I can fully hear the meeting? Thank you.
I have to say that I share your concern in relation to not being able to hear, but I think that's largely because Councillor Webb was speaking a little bit quietly. Yeah. Councillor Hudson.
Sir, if you'll permit me, I'll go and fiddle with it, as I always used to. It might help. If you'll give me just a moment, yes?
By all means. We'll see what we can do.
Thank you, Councillor Hudson.
More than what?
I think if I've correctly understood what Councillor Webb is saying is that it is now proposed that the council resolves, delete the words "to note," yeah. So it now reads, it is proposed that council resolves that the advice services contract be retendered for a further 2-year period, with the option for the council to extend the contract for a further 1 year, and that the value of the contract continue to be £70,000. Is that agreed, members? Thank you.
Chairman, is that better?
I think Councillor Mrs Mason should answer that question. Are you happy with that, Mr? Can you now hear? Excellent. Excellent. Item 9, report on urgent decisions. There are none. Item 10, report of the leader of the work of the executive, Councillor Cutmore.
Thank you, Chairman. I think the members will have a copy of this on their desks. Chairman, this is the first ordinary council meeting of the 2018-19 municipal year, and I would like to welcome all members. Since the meeting on the 24th of April, the executive has met twice, during which considerations included the provisional outturn position against the 2017-18 revenue budget, the retendering of the advice services contract 2019-22 with the option for the council to extend the contract for a further 1 year, the implementation plan for the economic growth strategy and associated key performance indicators, the process and outcomes of contract monitoring for the council's most significant contracts in terms of contract value and risk, and the latest version of the project's management programme management office dashboard. In other matters that my colleagues and I on the executive have dealt with include approving the air quality action plan for Rayleigh for submission to the Department of Environment, Food and Rural Affairs, and agreeing that the card payment facility is not updated and is disabled for a trial period of 6 months from all of the car park ticket machines within the Rochford district when the current chip and pin hardware becomes obsolete at the end of June 2018. Chairman, as always, I will be happy to take any questions from members in respect of the work of the executive, and I'm sure my executive colleagues will be happy to contribute where appropriate. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Mr Mason.
Thank you, Chairman. I understand that in relation to the car payment facility that the costs of using a phone pay would be absorbed from the 1st of July. I was contacted by residents around the 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th and 9th to say that that wasn't being the case and they were charged. The assistant director told me that it would be fixed. But I guess my concern is, did we refund? I know it's only a small amount, but a principle of ethics, did we arrange for those residents who were charged to be refunded?
Ah, you're over there. Mr. Hodson, would you like to comment on that?
He's going to work. I'm aware of a small number of instances, and certainly where they have approached us, we have been able to waiver that. But of course, it is not really a gift to trace back through the payment system to the direct payment, if you wish. So if someone has come to us and said there was an issue, then yes, we would do so. But it was a small number. There is some confusion over the payment system as well. I think some people are thinking that they're still paying 20 pence for the charge, but they're actually paying a 2 sets of 10 pence for additional things in terms of receipting that are not actually part of the charging system. So you used to be able to pay up to 40 pence. That's 20 pence for the transaction of the car parking charge, and another additional 2 10 pences. One is for a reminder, and the other one is for requesting a formal receipt. So that at times I think people are still selecting for those two options. But certainly the actual cost now of the transaction has been removed. But for those that have come forward, yes, we have waived that.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? No. Item 11, motions on notice, there are none. Item 12, Association of South Essex Local Authorities Joint Strategic Plan. Councillor Cotmore.
Thank you, Chairman. Members may be aware in certain press announcements and other things that indeed we're working with other authorities, that being Basildon, Castle Point, Thurrock, Southend and Brentwood, together with Essex County Council, what I like to call the Magnificent Chairman, the Magnificent Seven Chairman, to see if we can actually get some further investment in our own area of South Essex. This is an interesting and an innovative association, Chairman. I think in the past where you've had councils such as district councils, county councils and unitary councils working together, it's been called like herding cats. But on this particular occasion, I think we're actually working in unison, which is a first. And I think we're the first of our kind as well to try and actually take this sort of thing forward. Now, I know that Councillor has asked the question about any overarching plan that may come forward from that. And of course, it will be bottom-up, Chairman, in as much as we would have our own local plan, which would be sacrosanct to us. But in achieving that plan, we may look to a further plan which actually joins and has synergies with other councils so that we can actually take forward further investment to get the numbers of houses that we want in this area and actually have the proper infrastructure that would support them in our local plan. So the two things go together, Chairman, but of course our own local plan is actually the plan that we have and we're part of. So as far as the statement of common ground is concerned, it's about working towards what government policies is and will be going to be. Having heard James Grokenshire at the meeting that he had at in Thurrock recently, he is very much recommended to councils that they work together. We already have a duty to cooperate with other councils, and really this is just an extension to that. So we're working with other councils nearby to make sure that we can actually try and extract from government as much investment in our local area as we can, so that when we do actually build houses and actually the industry and other things that we have, and we're not just talking about those, we're talking about schools, we're talking about health and open spaces as well, that we try and get the maximum that we can. So in that context, that's what we've been working on. There are various strands to this that I know various councils and their officers are working through. And I know our own particular chief executive, with his planning experience, is actually leading on the planning side. So we have a, you know, we're overplaying our card on that one, which is quite an interesting place to be. And we've already got 900,000 grant from the government planning delivery fund. So it shows that the government is actually taking real interest in what we're doing to try and get a result. Part of that result, which came before this, was getting the investment in the 127 Fair Glen, Chairman, which, you know, would be 60 odd million pounds. And that's been out for consultation recently, and will be coming forward in a couple of years or so. But so what we really want is investment in things like the 127 that will enable growth that we want in a planned and proper way, with the support that's needed to support that growth. So going forward, I see this as a real advantage for not just for Rochford, but for the whole of South Essex, because of course people do travel outside of our own district into other boroughs and other areas, and so, you know, they don't see necessarily the boundaries that we see as politicians. So I think it's important that we actually work together to a common goal. It's already been mentioned about Brentwood, Basildon and Castle Point having letters from the government saying that they've got to get on with their plans. Well, this is also one of the things I think that the ASELA, the Association of South Essex Local Authorities, is also looking at, to make sure that we can actually help them as much as we can to achieve their local plans. So I see the synergies between our local plan and that overarching plan coming forward, together with the other local authorities, and you know, it's a unique opportunity to actually take a proper planned approach to a whole area of South Essex. And that's, you know, getting on for 900,000 people, I think, is the figure, to make sure that we, at this sort of eastern part, to the east of London, actually take ourselves forward. We think there's been underinvestment in our area in the past. We want to try and put some of that right, Chairman. So I do commend the fact that we're actually taking this forward, and I think the statement, I think, actually is sort of one of the building bricks, if you like, the foundations of that going forward. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Councillor John Mason.
Thank you, Chairman. Clearly, there will be, well, maybe it isn't clear. I think that there should be an overarching plan coming from ASELA relating to South Essex. So if that is the case, and that's a reasonable assumption, and it was the assumption I made in planning policy, so no one's disabused me of it, I then have concerns to say, is this solely going to be decided by politicians working together in councils, or are the public actually going to be involved in determining whether the plan is what they want? If I remember correctly, the Right Honourable Mr Brokenshire spoke about the very real need, if you're going to have new conurbations, in other words, new developments in the form of garden villages, then these authorities will have to take all of the residents with them, and he wants to see that happen. So I'd like to know the plans that ASELA have got to consult with the public, consult with residents on the plans they have.
Thank you.
Thank you. If I can draw members' attention to page 1219 on the report, you'll see the proposed timetable for the preparation of the joint strategic plan, and within the top section on that page, you'll see that there's mention of Regulation 18, for example. The intention is that the plan preparation process follows exactly the same plan preparation process as would be the case for a local plan or a minerals and waste plan. That's the legislation and rules that the government requires us to conform to. So it will be subject to extensive public consultation as part of the plan preparation process.
Councillor Steptoe.
Thank you, Chairman. It was mentioned there about the A127, and just so members are aware, in my role as County Councillor, I'm in the process of setting up a task force to look at the A127, and I refer to it as the A127 Economic Corridor, just the A127, and that will include trains as well as buses, as well as the A127. Outside of the councils that Councillor Cutmore has mentioned, as far as the A127 is concerned, we're also working with Havering and also Malden, interestingly enough. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs Mason.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You'll be pleased that I'm not going to comment on the extractor fan.
I trust that is because it is now satisfactory.
It's absolutely fine, and my thanks to Councillor Hudson. I've just got one question, and it's a very minor concern. On page 1221, 10.1, it says that the local planning authorities will be asked to make decisions based on advice. Now, what weight will the planning authority have to give to that advice? Because at the moment we would consider advice, we have statutory consultees, we have other information, but the word based, and I'm not arguing about the wording, it's obviously considered, implies some obligation there to the planning authority, which gives me a concern that as an individual planning authority that we might be dictated to, for want of a better word, by another body. So I'd just like some confirmation that that's not the intention. I'm sure it's not, and I'm hoping I'm misreading it, but I would like that confirmed. Thank you.
Councillor Cutmore.
Well, Chairman, I don't know if I'm reading this wrong. I suppose it's semantics, but if you look at it, it says who will be asked, not will be instructed or co-joined. Doesn't mean to say we have to do it, Chairman. And I've already said that this will be bottom-up, not top-down. But, of course, there will be things that we would have to do to conform with a plan that comes forward. And, of course, that's the exact context in which we see this. So, I think it's a bit of a nothing question, really. Because there's very little that you can actually contradict in this. I think it's extremely clear, Chairman. But just to clarify, yes, we would be asked to say certain things because there would be information and clarification required on our part or our joint signature to any plan that covers the whole area. So I think that's very clear, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Reeves.
Thank you, Chairman. I hope this isn't considered a vague question. It's concerning item 4.1 on page 12.2, where you've got the first indent there. It says, provide a more effective way of place shaping, providing a bigger canvas to direct development to the right areas that deliver growth. My concern there, and I'm sure the concern would be for our residents, that we are looking at there, direct development to the right areas. Does that therefore mean that if it is considered by this group that this area would be more suitable to direct development to, that we would be subject to more development? I know Councillor Cutmore has already said that it will be a bottom-up issue, but this seems to almost be in contradiction to that.
Councillor Cutmore.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you. Chairman, we're early days as far as any of this is concerned, and that's very clear, Chairman. But, of course, we do have a duty to cooperate, which is already there. And, of course, if we have the right infrastructure to deliver the housing that we're looking at, indeed, that's the whole point, Chairman. And I think the Councillor is absolutely right in what he's saying, in as much as far as any infrastructure is concerned, that will enable growth. But you can't get one without the other. So as far as that's concerned, yes, we have to play our part in any cooperation that we have with other council. Doesn't mean to say we can't reject it, change it, not have it at all. But that's a conversation to be had, Chairman, and it's been there before and it's still there. So that duty to cooperate remains.
Thank you. Are there any more questions? I'm sorry, Councillor Mr. Hoy.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, just to follow on from Councillor Reeves, and the concerns that I also have around this. Paragraph 9.3, it talks about there are no housing allocations set out in the SOCG, Statement of Common Ground, as this will be determined through the JSP and based on the agreed spatial strategy and updated evidence base. Now, undoubtedly, I understand that we are saying, or Councillor Cutmore is saying, this is going to be being prepared from what the councils are pushing upwards, if you like. The concern is that that may be the intent, but quite often intents don't always happen, and it can be. And the concern is that this union, I will call it, of local authorities, may end up working the other way. And I wonder what safeguards we have. I understand that we are not bound by this. We can leave at any time. It's my understanding. Is there a veto that we have over it? That if one local authority does not agree to something, they can say no, that's not going to happen, and still be part of the group. I understand, and Councillor Cutler was telling me it's not like that. It's going to be quite. I'm sure you discuss things, and I'm sure that's not your intent. But the concern is that that may be overtaken by that. The final question is, I've asked this at many meetings now. In the original grant application, there was an award made for costs to the previously prepared SHMA. Can we please see if any of that money is entitled to come back to Rochford? I've asked the question, I've been told it will be looked at, and I have still not had an answer. Thank you.
Councillor Cutmore.
I won't answer the second question, Chairman, but as far as the first question is concerned, yes.
Thank you.
Chairman, if I may, in relation to the second question, we'll take that back and make sure there's a response.
I'd like to move the motion, Chairman. I'll second that, Chairman.
Thank you. In that case, the recommendation is that Council resolves to approve the statement of common ground prepared by the Association of South Essex Local Authorities as set out in the appendix to this report to guide the preparation of the joint strategic plan for South Essex. Is that agreed, members? Thank you. Item 13, lease of the house in multiple occupation property in Rochford, King's Head, 11 West Street, Rochford. Who's going to lead on this? Councillor Webb.
Thank you, Mr.
Glad
Chairman.
to represent that.
Rochford District Council is planning to offer 11 self-contained rooms at the King's Head, 11 West Street, Rochford, to individuals who urgently need to be housed. The 3 ground floor properties will be used for commercial purposes. This will ensure that people who are currently already suffering a great deal of upheaval in their lives can continue to live in the district and maintain their local ties and support networks. There are currently over 80 households in temporary accommodation, and over 25% of these have had to be placed in emergency accommodation outside of the district, which causes disruption to local residents as well as a significant cost to the council taxpayer. The use of 11 West Street will also enable the authority to make a cost saving of approximately £50,000 per year. If, as a council, we do not take this opportunity, then we risk these properties going to a housing provider from out of the area and putting residents into our area who are not our residents. This way we remain in control of the property and have exclusive nomination rights that can help out our residents. If this is agreed tonight before council, then it is planned that residents and businesses will be invited to attend drop-in sessions to hear about the plans to provide much needed temporary housing in Rochford Town Centre. 2 drop-in sessions are planned at Rochford Parish Council rooms on the 30th of July. And local residents and businesses will be personally invited by letter. Therefore, I am pleased to recommend to the Council the recommendations on 8.1 that the Council resolves that a 10-year lease be entered into for the King's Head, 11 West Street, Rochford, and that authority to agree the final lease be delegated to the Assistant Director, Community and Housing Services, in consultation with the Assistant Director Legal Services and the portfolio holder for community. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions? I'm sorry, I got Mr. Hoy. Councillor Mr. Hoy.
Thank you, Chairman. There's a concern I just want to raise in a minute. Obviously the figures do add up on this and it does make sense. I'm not sure it's necessarily the property we would have chosen if it was in our gift to do, but this is something that's apparently been offered to us. That is why I want to raise the next question. I have concerns over when we were approached or we approached the people on this property. This went through planning at this committee and I had heard rumours that we were involved with it at that time, but we were advised that no, we weren't. Can someone please state at what point we were aware that we would be or had been offered this property to use? Thank you.
Do you want to answer that?
When working on South Street with the private developer, we were advised that they were looking at other local property, and we were asked whether there was a continuing housing need, and we said yes, there was. The fact that they made a decision to turn that into an HMO was their decision. We weren't involved, and we wouldn't have made any subsequent decision around housing homeless households until such time that they might have obtained any permission. But they asked us for a housing need and we said we've got one.
Sorry, can we have the actual date officially that we were interested? Thank you.
I have to be honest with you, I can't remember the actual date, but I'm sure I can get it for you if I go back in my diary at the time we were working on South Street.
That could be provided.
Yes, that's certainly.
Councillor Mr. Mason, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I certainly don't want to lose sight of the fact this is going to be a very important resource for residents of our district who obviously, fall on times where they need support and assistance. So it's a good thing we do. And if we save money along the way, that's even better. So I support it. I would have supported it as I did support South Street and would have supported others if they come forward. The concern I have, and it's not a concern that I personally became aware of, but it was a concern that was put to me by a resident and probably another one in concert, to say that this building obviously suffered a fire very recently, and to say, is there any situation in terms of the financial side, the rent we're paying, that underwrites any of the repairs that were undertaken or will be undertaken as a result of the fire? Because we shouldn't be doing that. And that's something residents are concerned to have an assurance upon, that there is no allowance within the rent to in any way underwrite renovations from the fire.
I can give my categorical. There is absolutely no, in the lease cost, there is no allowances for any renovation costs as because of the fire. Absolutely not. And those costs have yet to be decided and still being discussed with the insurers, I understand, from the private developers. So I just need to give you my reassurances about that.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs. Mason.
Something that is so needed in our district, and I'm sure that when we're sitting here and we're quite comfortable, that sometimes we forget that it could be us in need, and this is a resource that we desperately need. But I do have one concern. I have visited our homeless providers in Southend and Westcliff. I've visited South Street. The differential between those properties that made a difference to the residents, according to the residents, was the fact that in both Westcliff and Southend there was a communal room. And people in this situation need support, and they don't always want the support that perhaps councils and officials can offer. They need the support of people in a similar situation, peer support if you like, and I would ask the portfolio holder and the assistant director to look at this and we're at a relatively early stage, and see if there could be some communal space made for the residents so that they can socialise and assist each other. Because I think that's as equally important as saving money, is the fact that they need other sort of support. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chairman. Planning was mentioned earlier. Can I just, for the sake of clarity, make it absolutely clear to all members that when this property came to planning, it was determined wholly on planning issues. The end users, the lease, were not part of that decision in any form. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Griffin.
Thank you, Chairman. How many how many individual people can be accommodated in these units? Are they all one-person flats? Thank you.
As detailed in the report, at the moment we're proposing that all the units within the HMO are for single occupancy, so maximum 11 individuals.
As I see no other hands indicating, recommendation is that Council resolves that a 10-year lease be entered into for the King's Head 11 West Street, Rochford, and that authority to agree the final lease be delegated to the Assistant Director Community and Housing Services in consultation with the Assistant Director Legal Services and the portfolio holder for community. Is that agreed, members? Thank you. The final item on the agenda, item 14, allocation of seats on committees. Councillor Cutmore.
Is it working? There we go. Right, Chairman, I think we've got a revised appendix that's come forward and has been tabled here, Chairman. I note one change is in the Appeals Committee, where you've got one Liberal Democrat seat instead of it being split over Liberal Democrats and Friends of Rochford. But there are two spaces, I think, for Conservative members, as we now have 26 members, and those are on the Investment Board and on standards. I would like to propose that Councillor Efty be filling those two spaces, and he actually sits on both of those committees already, so it actually fits quite well, Chairman.
Chair, I second that.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Mr Mason.
Thank you, Chairman. I didn't ever think I'd be actually standing in this chamber and saying this, but we've just turned it off. It was all off. Well, perhaps I'll start again because perhaps I'll be surprised myself by not being expecting to say this in the chamber. I am amazed to find that someone leaves a group on this side of the chamber and it reduces the representation in my group. The member who has moved from Friends of Rochford to the Conservative group has got nothing to do with the Green and Rochford District Residents group, and yet the number of allocation of total seats to my group has actually been reduced by 1. I don't understand it. I'll be voting against this and I want to take it further.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Mr Hoy.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm not sure I can follow that. I'll probably be saying much the same thing. The seat allocation for our group has reduced by 1 from the report produced in May. Our group size hasn't changed. There is no change in our group membership. This is clearly wrong, in my mind, that Friends of Rochford lose 1/3 of their members and retain all of their seats, well, bar 1 now, it would appear, because they've now changed it since I wrote some of this, on the committees, well above proportionalities, while we, with no changes, have lost a seat. The only conclusion I can draw is that our seats have been calculated differently now than they had been in May. Well, they have been. This should not be the case, and I will be voting against the recommendation. The issue I have, and I've had extensive discussions over the last few days with both Mr Bostock and Mr Scrutton over this, is around consistency. There appears to be no consistency over whether or not we round up to a full number, we round up to half a number, or we round down a number. And it appears to be used in such a way that we are being disadvantaged by it. Or, as I said before, I'll be voting against. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Are there any other questions, comments? In that event, I'll move to the recommendation.
Mr Hookway wants to say.
Oh, Councillor Hookway, I apologise.
Thank you, Chairman. I had a brief conversation with Mr Bostock this afternoon, and we've had this allocation, seat allocation brought before us this evening. So I just want to be clear on what's being proposed, in that the allocation of seats for Friends of Rochford, according to this, is for 6 seats. 1 seat on 6 of the committees. Is that correct?
Yes, Chairman.
Thank you. The recommendation is that Council resolves that committee seat allocations be as shown in the appendix to this report. Is that agreed, member? I think we'll take a vote. I've just got to say, I think we'll take a vote on that. All those in favour, please show. All those against?
I'd like my vote against recorded in the minutes, Chairman. Thank you. I'd like my vote recorded. And mine as well, thank you.
Thank you. Any abstentions? Thank you. That being the last item on the agenda, that's the. I'll close the meeting at 8:47. Thank you for your attendance. Safe journey home.
Please be upstanding as the chairman and the managing director leave the chamber. Thank you.